All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you may be. Welcome to another episode of Catching Up with Jacob. And here he is, still on this side of the Atlantic, somewhere in the middle of the States. Obviously, it's a known location, but here he's Jacob Prasch.
Blessings and greetings in Jesus from Fort Donaldson, Tennessee. Moriel, don't tell anybody.
Very good, Jacob. I'm sure you've been sightseeing and got to some of the.
We did. We've been doing a ministry and working a lot, but obviously, I did take a little bit of time to go to some Civil War parks that I'd not been to. I like the history of the American Civil War because this is the second time the country's been this divided. This is the second time the country's been this divided. And I think there's things to learn from the first time that teaches about the present time.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Yes, indeed. Be that as it may, very few announcements. I will be at Marco's church. That is the Christian Church of Devore in California, in the eastern Los Angeles suburbs near San Bernardino. I shall be there the 20th and 21st of May, Saturday and Sunday. Among the other subjects we will be doing a renewed version of Egypt, Babylon, and the Palm of God. We'll have the normal Sunday service, at which Marco has also invited me to speak. That will be at Devore near Los Angeles next week. Following that, on the 27th and 28th, I shall be at the Church of the Open Door, the Moriel affiliated church in New York City, in the East Village on 7th Street and 3rd Avenue. I shall also be, or I'm scheduled to be, the following day, the 28th, in Baltimore, Maryland, Baltimore. So please go onto the Moriel website, moriel.org, find out the exact times and locations. We'll look forward to seeing you, should you be able to join us. Back in Britain, we have John Haller joining us in Scotland for the Moriel Conference on the 16th and 17th of June at Gartmore Castle in the Stirling Forest, not far from Edinburgh, not far from Glasgow, and very close to Loch Lomond. And John and myself will be there, and the subject will be prophecy, how the fathers long to see the things that we see in the very perilous times we live in. There is a silver lining to the cloud. The early Christians looked forward to seeing the return of Jesus, despite the horrific circumstances surrounding his return. So we'll be looking at prophecy from that perspective. It'll be John Haller from Prophecy Update and myself. That'll be in Scotland on the 16th and the 17th. If you are in Scotland, the north of England, or Northern Ireland, and you're able to join us, please go to the Moriel website, moriel.org. Contact Mar Gallen, who runs Moriel Scotland. Actually, the main house has been filled up already. It's booked out, but there is an adjacent facility that also has bedrooms available. So even though the main one, we filled it up, there's another one just across the way. So contact us if you can join us. But that's enough of the commercials. Let's move on. Marco?
Thanks, Jacob. Looking forward to having you here in California, and looking forward to spending a couple of days and talking about end times and what's going on in the world. We get a chance to do that all the time here, but it'll be nice to do it face to face. We also have David Lister. David Lister, how are you?
Doing well. Just been enjoying Jacob's company, discussing lots of things, and looking forward to being out in California. I'll be the in-between Jacob slot.
The in-between Jacob. Amen. Looking forward to having you here. We got Jay controlling all the ins and outs of this episode. How you doing, Jay?
Good. Greetings from the World's Test Kitchen for Socialism and Social Justice, Los Angeles, California.
Oh man, I wonder how that test is going.
Failing
on every side. Failing on every side. And down under, it's a Saturday already. Davey, good morning. How are you?
Yep. Morning, brothers. Doing pretty good, thanks.
All right, very good. So just want to remind everyone, we are in the different platforms. So if you are on those platforms, we welcome you, and you're watching live or you're watching later. Either way, it's great. So blessed to have you on, and so blessed to have all these brothers right here with us. But so blessed to have you as well as you watch and as you share these files. Make sure you go on to Memorial.tv. Make sure you go on to Rumble. Make sure you go to memorialtv.org. Make sure you go on to the platforms that allow us to have a lot more freedom in what we can say and preach the gospel and spread God's word, as well as the other platforms. Obviously, YouTube and Facebook and Vimeo are still being used, and we're on those. And as well as Telegram, which is gaining a lot of popularity among lots of people using that. But we're also going to be on Backstage. Backstage is the part of the show that we were not going to be able to talk about it on the bigger platforms like YouTube and Facebook. So we go on to Rumble and Memorial.tv and those other platforms. And you can go on there if you're not on there already. And we'll be asking questions. So you'll be taking questions on Rumble. So if you're going to ask some questions, make sure you're on Rumble, and we'll get to answer those. Jacob and David will be on, as well as we'll be talking about some interesting subjects today regarding what's going on in the States, especially politically, and how it addresses the issues of biblical prophecy. And if you don't catch Jacob on video, you can always catch Jacob and Memorial Teachers on podcasts, and the podcast continues to grow. Jay, very quickly, how's it look for podcasts this week coming up?
For this week, we have catching up. Actually, these are all wrong, so never mind. We have a bunch of new podcasts that are actually going to be dropping this week and the week prior. Actually, this 5:13 we have the weekend Bible study with Jacob, Repentance and Reality. 5:14
Yes.
we have Pastor Marco on the book of Colossians, Jesus, Lord of all and not at all. Okay. 5:15 we have this episode of Catching Up with Jacob will drop. 5:16 we have Evangelizing with David Lister, Evangelism Workshop Session 2. 5:17 we have Ken's Corner, episode 10. And 5:18 we have Jacob's midweek Bible study, Hebrews 12, part 1. 5:19 Friday with Jacob Prash, 7 Churches of Revelations, part 3. You can find us on Memorial.org, Memorial TV, Buzzsprouts, Apple Podcasts, and many more.
So lots of platforms, lots of choices, and I guess people like choices, so I think that's why we do it. People like to go on different ones. Everyone has their favorite one, and my favorite one may not be your favorite one, et cetera, et cetera. But so if you like a certain one, Jacob's probably on there. Share those podcasts, share those messages. Wonderful stuff from Sandy, from Jacob, from David, myself, Ken, which Jay takes part of that podcast as well. So very good stuff. All right, gentlemen, let's catch up. And I think the most probably pressing and the most important news at this point, and what a lot of people's minds are set on, and if they're paying attention at all, the barbarians are at the gate. Obviously, this was a book and a movie done some time ago, but we're talking about El Paso. Jacob, Title 42 expired last night. I was up last night keeping track of the news items that were coming in, some of the local reporters on site, and it did expire. And as soon as it expired, I'm telling you, it just sounds like a movie, but buses started coming in from Jalisco, down from Venezuela. They were loading up, heading over this way to the southern border of the United States. Many officials and ex-officials are warning it's a tsunami, not just of people, but fentanyl, drugs, criminal activity. You have gangs, you have the cartels, you have a lot of immigrants from Latin America, true, but we've seen some Haitian ones, we've seen some Muslim ones, we've seen some Chinese ones that seem to be some kind of maybe CCP agents, which a lot of people are debating whether or not they are, with military age, mostly men. But the Border Patrol apprehension has not worked over the past, I would say, couple of years since the Biden administration. Jacob, describe to us in your feelings about what's going on at the southern border. It's collapsing, if not collapsed already. Title 42 expired. What time is it now? About 12 hours ago. Your thoughts and feelings about what's going on in the southern border.
Any rational reasoning person, they understand what this is going to mean for law enforcement, what it's going to mean for the increased cost of social services for people with no right to be in the country, but we're going to pay for, including paying for 3- and 4-star hotels while our own people sleep in the streets. This just in itself proves that the Democratic Party does not care about the urban poor or about the homeless. It's just political footballs like anything else. What it's going to mean for human trafficking, what it's going to mean for child trafficking, what it's going to mean for obviously the further deaths of fentanyl, already the #1 killer of people in the 18 to 44, maybe even 16 to 44-year-old age bracket. This is insane, but not enough are dying. So our government wants more to die, particularly the present Obama administration. That's all obvious. But now I'd like to look at it from a broader perspective or more inclusive perspective. We've warned for years about conspiracy theorists, and they're in the secular world and always have been, but you get people in the church who are simply conspiracy theorists, but they imagine it's something to do with end-time prophecy or discernment. We've warned about this from the book of Isaiah chapter 8. You're not to call it a conspiracy. All this people calls a conspiracy. We've warned about this. And Isaiah says these things will increase before the Lord comes. We warned about this. I'm absolutely opposed to conspiracy theories. It's the boy who cried wolf. When something seriously happens, people will just think it's those kooky Christians saying things, again, that are nuts, and they won't listen when the boy cries wolf, even when the wolf really comes. However, I've got to the point where I'm convinced of something. When you have prosecutors funded by Soros, Democratic Party prosecutors in major cities, letting murderers out on the streets so they can murder more people, when you have a federal policy to open the border so fentanyl will kill more people, when you have a pro-crime government, pro-crime prosecution service and DAs, when you have politically engineered pandemics, when you have these kinds of things happening in concert with each other, there's got to be a common ingredient. I have no doubt that the powers that be, the globalists, want to crash the system. They're trying to do it for at least 2 reasons. One is obviously power for themselves, not just vassals like Biden or Obama, but the real powers that be. We're talking about Soros, we're talking about the banking establishment, the banksters of Wall Street, and so forth. Okay, there's that. They want power, they want a neo-feudalism. They want to replace capitalism with a new feudalism. It's not really about socialism. They just push a pseudo-socialist agenda or socialist agenda to achieve their real aim, which is feudalism, power for themselves. Second reason is they know something bad has to happen. Going back to the time of the Roosevelt administration, the Keynesian monster was let out of the cage. Sooner or later, there must be a day of reckoning. You can't go on like this. There are too many unfunded liabilities. There are too many pension funds that cannot be funded. There's too much risk of investment capital. There's too much risk. The FDIC cannot protect investors. All they can do is print more money, but the money becomes worthless. The powers that be know that a monster was unleashed in the 1940s, and they've tried in 1930s and 40s, and they've tried to control it with Bretton Woods. They've tried to control it with trilateralism. They've tried to control it with globalism, but they can't control it anymore. They have to abolish democracy. and create this feudalism, not only to protect their own interest, but so people will go with it. People will willingly surrender their freedom to prevent pandemonium. That is on back of the climate hoax joke. There's always been climate change. That is what is on back of the pandemic hoax. That is what is on back of digital currency. That is what is on back of border policy and immigration policy. That's what's on back of a lot of these things, particularly the pro-crime agenda of the government, both state, local, and federal. That is what's on back of it. Now, we know as Christians that this is Satan, that this is Satan paving the way for the Antichrist. He's going to create a breakdown of the system, economically, politically, and socially, that people in desperation will follow anybody who will get them out of it.
That's
We've
right.
had hints of this. You had hints of this in post-revolutionary France when the people turned to Napoleon. You had hints of this in Weimar Germany when people turned to Hitler. You had hints of this with the rise of Mussolini in Italy. You've seen this happen before in different countries at different times. Now, however, it is happening globally. It's happening in China. They're going to the wall. It's happening in Russia. It's happening in the EU. It's happening in Britain. It's happening in the USA. It is happening globally. They are going to use the breakdown to create such pandemonium and even hysteria that if somebody comes up and says, I can save you, I can straighten this out, they're going to believe them. And that person will be the Antichrist, who will commence his agenda coming, as Satan always does, as an angel of light, but he's going to be anything but an angel of light, but he's going to come as one. He's going to try to look like a lamb, but he's going to speak like a lion. And he is going to attempt to counterfeit, to mimic the millennial reign of Christ. Initially, that's how he's going to suck people in. These people are sucked in already. There's nothing to stop it, including most of the evangelical, so-called, whatever that means, church. There are not enough believers to be salt and light anymore. There are not enough believers preaching the true gospel anymore. There are not enough believers proclaiming the truth in light of biblical prophecy anymore. It's just not happening. Satan is on a rampage. Why? Peter tells us he knows his time is short. So yes, I can speak politically and economically about the ramifications and the crime ramifications and the social ramifications of the border crisis. I can do that. And we know the Democratic Party is trying to saturate red states with illegal immigrants that they're going to allow to register to vote in the hope they'll be Democrats. They're going to do that. That is obviously their plan. But it is part of a much broader plan involving many other things, from the banking sector to crime to pandemics, public health. They will use anything to bring in this neo-feudalism. And this neo-feudalism will end with the feudal lord like history has never seen. It'll be the Antichrist and false prophet. It'll be political, it'll be economic, and it will be religious. And it is coming. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not an alarmist, but I am a biblical realist. That is what is happening.
Very good, Jacob. Jay, you have some input on this.
Yeah, actually, he covered what I was going to say. Texas, growing up in Texas, it is a staunch red state. But yes, the Democrat Party part of this is to turn it into a purple state, to a blue state. But not only this, during the time when Americans are dealing with out of control inflation, these people are coming to this country with no money, with no promise of jobs. AI is taking jobs away from Americans. Who's going to support these people? Answer: the government. The government's going to support these people, and that is going to cause even further inflation.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting, they do, being from Latin America myself, and our family migrating here a long time ago. And yes, I sympathize with people that do come wanting for a better life, because Latin America has been destroyed. It's been destroyed by the globalists. It's been destroyed by communism, been destroyed by their own people and corruption. So people are just trying to flee, and they're being used as pawns, but ultimately they're going to be destroyed themselves, because they're going to end up being slaves to a system in which they think they're going to be taken care of. But they've been used to that in other countries, and all they're looking for is a handout. Plus, that's just one portion of it. What about the terrorist that comes? What about the CCP agents that come? What about the other drug cartels and gang members that come into, disguised many times as normal Latin Americans, sometimes drug trafficking, sometimes sex trafficking, children trafficking. So it is a recipe for disaster. David Lister, I wanted to ask you this, since you've been at the Civil War memorials and looking at the Civil War history. Has there ever been a time like this where the nation is so divided, and do you think it'll unleash a division so much so that a civil war is inevitable? Maybe not a civil war. I'll just clarify. I'm not talking about that dimension of war, but a dimension of war that it may be already in place, which is so divided, there's no way to bring it back, and it's just we're heading toward a national divorce. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, one of the things that the Civil War was divided over, in which sometimes it's people that had money said the Civil War was concerning the 10th Amendment and the lifestyle. Okay, it was these men went to war because they wanted to protect their agrarian lifestyle. They wanted to, not necessarily that they had slaves, but they felt that the North would take over and impose upon them. So there was that
States'
aspect
rights.
of it. But now what we're seeing is the Biden administration and everything imposing their will upon us, and then lying directly to our face. And what I see is the big division is that people are being turned over so badly that they prefer the lie, that they want the lie. And the lie is being sold, oh, we're doing this because we're a good country. We're doing this to help the poor. We're doing this for, and then and as we go along, they're going to be selling us safety with money and safety from terrorism. They'll be promising us more and more things, but it'll all be a lie, ending badly for people. And so people can only be pushed so far. And we're seeing like many southern states are trying to hold back some of this onslaught with
Right.
laws, trying to stop the various liberal policies that deal with children and operations and things like this. And so people are trying to fight back. But like Jacob said, there's not enough salt in the church. There's not enough light to hold back the darkness. These people believe satanically, they believe this is their time, and they're pushing. And I don't know if it's going to end in a civil war, because nowadays they can turn us off. They can turn your electricity off. They can turn your fuel off. They can just turn you off. So how will you go somewhere to fight? You might fight on your own front yard or something like this to protect your house, but it's very, very different. But I can tell you this, in the Civil War parks we saw, there was slaughter, and people were slaughtered, and they walked into the slaughter. So it was amazing. Just how south here in Nashville, people just wanting to be free walked right into the slaughter of cannons and gunfire that they couldn't do anything about. And yet they tried to stand up for what they believe was right, but yet they died doing it. And I think people will try, but I don't know how much we can hold back the darkness. The spiritual darkness is coming, and the rapidness of people being turned over. I mean, I know what Jacob said is true. People wanted to see the coming of the Lord, but I don't know if they envisioned what we're seeing now as coming.
Yeah, don't desire the day of the Lord.
Yeah,
Yeah, don't desire the day of the Lord, said Amos. Just one quick thing regarding the lawlessness. Jacob, back to you. We talked about the gunfire that many Americans, many Christians don't even realize. Heavy gunfire at the Texas border, right there. I believe it's called Far Reynosa International Bridge, which I've been nearby there a long time ago when I was a kid. But the reality is this is controlled by cartels. These border cities are controlled by the drug cartels on the other side, and it's literally a war. This is not just a metaphor for something happening down there. It is deadly shootouts. They've been filmed. These are border wars, and the cartels are very heavily armed with drones and technology that people only dream of having. But these bullets have hit U.S. custom facilities. They've been shooting at border patrol agents. We're talking about, without what I just described is basically an invasion and a war. And even Chicago is all up in arms about it because they're getting some of that flack, bringing in illegal immigrants into their community. So let's talk about those two things: the actual war and fighting that's really happening at the border, and then how it's spilling into other cities like Chicago, which it's nothing like El Paso, but they're not happy with what's going on, which there's a lot to be said about the Black community there. But Jacob, we'll start with you. We'll go around.
Well, first of all, we have to understand that the way was paved for this kind of on-border confrontation during the Obama administration with Eric Holder, another man who's never been brought to justice, in contempt of Congress, and has never been brought to justice. At least not in this life, but a horrible, horrible figure. This was a long time coming. It's not spontaneous. Now there was a hiatus, an interruption of it in the policies of the Trump administration, but once Biden came back, he just resumed the policies of Biden. But even of Obama. But even Obama carried out deportations. Now they've gone beyond that, and they're not carrying out the deportations. Forget about Title 42. Just forget about it. It just doesn't matter. Now, this armed conflict, again, we talking about it on the border. Remember, they want pandemonium. They want people to be so afraid and distraught, they will do what they are told without question. Same as they did in COVID. Just do what you're told and don't question it. Don't question us. Forget about the facts. Trust us, even though we're liars and hypocrites and crooks. That's where it comes from. So defund the police. Okay. You can't have a gun yourself. Stop the Second Amendment. So the cops can't protect you. You can't protect yourself. And then tie the hands of the Border Patrol. Don't let them do their job. So you can bring in even more guns, more crime, more drugs. Again, it has to be deliberate. It has to be deliberate. Now, the mainstream media, of course, is not going to report it. It's corrupt, and it's in the swamp with the politicians and the bureaucrats. CNN and the networks and so forth, MSNBC, they're the voice of the swamp. They're not the voice of truth or of the people or of fair journalism. They're the voice of the swamp. They're not telling people. Notice how it's being underreported, how it is being underreported. They don't want you to be able to defend yourself. They won't even defend the border themselves. They just want this pandemonium. It is
That's right.
Open treason. It is open treason.
Now in Chicago,
You're selling out the foreign interests like China by doing it. Where's the fentanyl coming?
Now, Lightfoot is up in arms about the fact that there's so many illegal migrants coming into Chicago, and even the Black community saying, we didn't sign up for this. They're going to take our jobs. They're going to take everything from us.
Yeah, they're going to take your jobs and they're going to mess your neighborhood up. and they're going to destroy your voice politically, but don't say you didn't sign up for it. When you voted for Barack Obama, you signed up for it. When you voted for Spritzer, you signed up for it. When you voted for Johnson, you signed up for it. When you voted for Lightfoot, you signed up for it. This is what you signed up for. This is what you voted for. This is what you've got. Quit whinging. You wanted it. You got it. Deal with it.
David Lister, you've seen some of the comments by the Black community leaders in Chicago, and they're just shocked. I don't know how they're shocked. I mean, if LeBron James is like their main political figure, and they all go along with what the Democrats want, and this is what the Democrats wanted, what's the big deal?
Well, they say their political voice is going to be taken away because they know in other cities that they're actually now allowing non-citizens to vote. So they're definitely scared of that the Black minority is going to have their voice silent. They won't be politically necessary anymore. That's what they're deathly afraid of, and so they've made themselves stupid by repeating the same error every time, voting for the people that don't help them, but just do the same bad things, keep cities full of crime, keep cities full of all unrighteousness that you can think of. You could see this in Baltimore, you could see it in Detroit, you can see it in Chicago. And I used to work down in there. I did some feeding programs down there where this neighborhood where they just sent 500 immigrants into. And wow, there's just they're up in arms, and the people are scared to death because of the guns and the crime that's coming. And they have a right to scream, but it's too late. It's too late.
I mean, they literally, they did not vote for Lightfoot, but they got somebody else worse than Lightfoot, which is basically a common open Marxism. Yeah. So it just befuddles me, the thinking, hey, we didn't sign up for this, but you did sign up for it. So in the Latin American community as well, when you have here in Los Angeles and California, they vote for stuff like this all the time, and they don't really. Yeah, they really don't. By the way, Jacob, you see Dianne Feinstein coming back to the Capitol Hill. I don't know where they dug her up from, but she looked really bad. She's 89. She's coming back, visibly decrepit, and yes, she says she's got a few more years to go. Is Capitol Hill a nursing home now? I mean, you got Biden, you got all these older Democrats. Sanders, yeah. They're the ones that allowed all this to happen. And is there any age limit? I mean, can we put a cognitive test or some kind of some kind of test for even a drug test? I don't even know what people on.
The left wanted a cognitive test for Trump, even though he was mentally coherent and displayed no signs of senility or dementia of any kind. But for Biden, who displays it every day, they don't want it. It's not the dual standards are as usual. Look, Feinstein is a depraved figure. She's a depraved woman. She was the one who brought out this ridiculous allegation against Kavanaugh from somebody who said he did this when he was 16 at a party in high school, and then they dug this woman out to come out 40, 50 years later, whatever it is, and try to hang him for something they said happened when he was in high school. This was Feinstein, assisted by Hirono, obviously, but this was Feinstein. She's just a despicable woman. I'll be glad to see the end of it. It is almost, I want Jewish people to be saved, but I'm afraid she's going to go the way of Ginsburg. A Jew who dies without her Messiah, and she's going to pay eternally for all the damage she's done.
A very sad thing to see, but a very sad thing to for people to think that she's actually competent to do her. She's never been competent. She's been compromised by even the CCP for a while. But anyway, we'll get into that at the end. Backstage.
Marco.
Yeah,
500 people has been sent into this neighborhood down there below 55th, where Obama went to school.
Talking about Chicago.
In Chicago.
Yeah.
500. And this is the first day.
Yeah.
a lot more coming. Would they have 10,000 cross the border yesterday? And more
Yeah,
flooding
minimum.
in today,
Well,
Yeah.
80,000 more coming.
Buses are on their way, Chicago.
Yep.
Yeah.
And now the Democratic amnesty states, well, you guys get to live up to your promises. We're
Oh,
gonna
man.
see if
You're
what
going to
you're
be a
doing.
sanctuary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
gonna be
What a
sanctuary. All
sanctuary.
you guys will be feeling the brunt and the pain of all this that Texas has felt, that the other states
Yeah.
have felt. Only it's gonna be worse because now it's unlimited amount of people coming.
Did you
When a
see the
white-
National Guard actually loading people into the buses? I mean, this was
Yeah.
crazy. This is traitor. This is treason. The National Guard loading people up into the bus and sending them up to the states. I've never seen anything like that.
Yep, this is an open betrayal of the national interest by a corrupt government. And there are people stupid enough to vote Biden they'll vote for Biden and vote Democrat again.
Yeah,
The Texas people, the Texas National Guard are putting up barbed wire fence. In the meantime, the government is advising the Mexican government where these refugees should go so they don't encounter the Texas government, that Texas National Guard, that are actually putting up barbed wire and trying to stop it. So we're a
Yeah, they're
nation
using
divided.
WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Yeah, WhatsApp encrypted chat rooms. Jacob, before we switch to technology and AI, because I like what Jay had to say about it because of jobs situation, what's going on. I did want to ask, this is not new in terms of what's happening here in the States. Other countries have suffered it, and you live in England most of the time, and you've seen the boat migrants coming into England all the time. France, Belgium, Netherlands, Germany.
Liberal countries of Europe, particularly France, Britain under the Labour Party especially, but not only Labour, France most critically, certainly Sweden. These countries that voted liberal and socialist, they're now reaping what they sowed with Islamic and African immigration, or Afro-Islamic immigration. The rapes, the murders. If you look at one of these countries, take Denmark. One country, Denmark, 70% of the convicted rapists in Denmark are Muslim. But Muslims are only 4% of the population. Yet, and 90% of the victims of raped women are Danish. Well, it's the same, going to be the same. You know, if a liberal Democrat woman in California votes for Biden or Obama, and she gets raped and murdered, I'm not wishing it on her, but don't expect me to feel sorry for her. She got what she voted for. She reaped what she sowed. And that actually happened in Oakland. That's what you want. That's what you got. We warned years ago. We warned years ago, and I warned at the very beginning when we were doing Catching Up, that blacks are not going to be the main minority. Hispanics are now going to have the numbers, and their numbers are increasing. The black people are not going to be the main minority. It's going to be Hispanics. Secondly, Hispanics are more upwardly mobile after 1 to 2 generations than blacks. Blacks will stay the low man on the totem pole as Asians and Hispanics climb the ladder economically. Blacks are going nowhere as a whole. Third thing I warned about, that with the numbers will be a loss of political influence of Black America. They won't be able to stop it. And now they're realizing it. They're realizing what they voted for. You wanted Obama? You got him. You wanted Biden? You got him. Now stop. You wanted Dick Durbin? You got him. Now stop whinging.
The definition of insanity is to do the same thing and expect a different result.
Jacob, if you remember, there was a black congressman that supported Biden, and actually, when he was losing, pulled him. I'm trying to recall his name, but if you remember, his endorsement got people rallying around him in the Democratic Party from South Carolina. I'm trying.
Yeah. What's his name?
And their own leaders have
Yeah,
betrayed the blacks, have they not?
Of course.
Absolutely.
Of course. They are the sandbags.
Let's switch gears real quick to technology and AI. Jay brought up the fact that the jobs are being taken away by AI. This is not a hyperbole. Well, one part of the industry, which is the Writers Guild, they're being replaced. They're on strike now, but it seems like they're not suffering. The industry is not suffering. AI is writing all the scripts, and music's being written by AI. But now you have other sectors that are being affected by AI, and this scenario. It's really interesting. And I watched an interview with someone that works with Elon Musk about, hey, AI becomes so powerful. Hopefully they keep us around, of course, tongue in cheek, but not so much tongue in cheek. Wendy's is putting in AI in their drive-throughs. This is a local, well, not local, but nationwide fast food place that you can order through AI. EU lawmakers are trying to regulate it, Jacob, and trying to be the first ones to have some regulation. I think the Pandora's box is completely open. They're not going to be able to put it back on. But this leads to other things. AI controlled cities, what they call the 15-minute cities, will be controlled by smart cities through surveillance, zero privacy. We've seen what China's done since 2016, 2017. Jacob, talk about it, then we'll go around. How much AI is going to play influence in society, finances, and of course, ultimately, we look at, as Christians, we look at this from a biblical perspective. How far are we in already? We know where it's going. How far are we in already?
Yesterday, Elon Musk, I believe it was yesterday, said he believes that AI can become more intelligent than human beings eventually. Now,
Yeah.
I'd just like to read from Revelation chapter 13, verse 14. He deceives those who dwell on the earth because of the signs which it was given to him to perform in the presence of the beast. This is the false prophet before the Antichrist. Telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image, an icon, Greek word icon, to the beast. In other words, not simply of, but to. It's an adoration, commemoration of him. Now listen, who had the wound of the sword and came back to life, counterfeiting the resurrection of Jesus. Let's look. And there was given to him breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast might even speak and cause as many who do not worship the image of the beast to be killed. That word breath is psuke. It is like when God breathed on Adam, he became a living soul. In the person of Antichrist, the false prophet, in the person of the false prophet, Satan, is going to try to do what God did. Create a new species by putting his breath into it. Now that word is suke. In other words, you're talking about something that has a consciousness of its own. An automaton, a computer system that will be in an image, an icon that will have an intelligence of its own. This is frightening. This will be not just technology gone out of control. It'll be technology that is satanically commandeered. You are going to have a satanically commandeered super technology. It's going right for Revelation 13. Just look at where AI is now. It cannot take a very long time for this to happen. The pace at which these technologies are improving is incredible in itself. Remember, in Daniel, knowledge will increase, and that has a wide meaning, of course, but the pace at which it's happening, these things can happen very quickly. We are running out of time to fulfill our mission and to proclaim our message. The faithful believers only have a certain amount of time. This stuff is becoming imminent. Imminent. The technology will be satanically taken over and have a soul like an animal does. It'll not be a human soul, but it will be a soul.
Some intelligence. Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that's really interesting, I don't know if you have heard that chatbot GPT-4 can now be, can respond to you now via voice, and you could see an image of chatbot GPT. Before it was just a prompt. You just put in your prompt and you got back some words. Now you can see an image, you can talk to it, and it can actually respond to you via a voice, sort of like Siri or these other assistants, like Google assistants and things like that. So what is interesting is the makers of chatbot GPT, which is OpenAI, they didn't think this was going to be around until 10 years from now. But how quickly it has evolved, how quickly it's learned, how quickly it has the technology has increased, has even befuddled their own makers. And so, we're not really making a hyperbole about this. As Jacob pointed out, it is moving very fast. And talk to anybody in AI, the developments of AI and its learning. And what's interesting, Jacob, what is causing it's a feedback loop mechanism within the system, meaning that because it could lie, because it has a bent against Christians and against conservatism, it actually is able to write documents that if you search it out and say, well, let's say it's transgenderism wrong, and they would go on and tell you, no, it's wrong, it's fine, it's this, children can have their own choices, whatever. And because it's connected to the internet, it actually would put those documents into the internet. So if anybody wants to look them up and look up like, hey, what does chatbot GPT says about this? It'll actually give them a response from chatbot GPT. And so it basically confirms like a loop back mechanism of a lie being perpetrated over and over and over and over again. And that's going to be what people believe. It's already in the system. You know what I'm saying? It's a feedback mechanism that it lies upon lies upon lies. And it's because it's made in man's image and likeness. And it eventually will have demonic powers. As Jacob put it out. Jay, I just want to go to you very quickly. Obviously, we talked about AI for a while. It's nothing new for us here, but what stands out to you when new developments come on and we look at how fast it's approaching and things that we've never thought it could do? But what impresses you? And impressing me doesn't mean it's a good thing, but what impresses you the most about AI and how fast it's going?
Well, one thing that I wanted to mention, that if you ask an AI like chatbot GPT, tell me about Jesus, it won't give you anything. It will say, he's a fictional character that Christians venerate, if you get that much. But if you ask, tell me about Buddha, they'll give you a list. Buddha was a holy, Siddhartha Gautama was born in India and was a venerated holy man that everybody loved. So you can see the bias there. It strikes me that fallen man has created something not in his own image. AI is not in the image of man. AI is in the image of what they want as a God. They want something that has, like you said, omniscience. It can see through all the eyes electronically. It can know everything about the person that it's looking at. This is crazy to the point where, if you really want to know where we're heading, because again, it's going to do everybody's job for them soon. If you've ever read George Orwell's Down and Out in London and Paris, where it talks about the different classes of people that will be begging, from the person that sells flowers to the person who sells matches. These are going to be the only jobs that people have in the future. And then chatbot is going to, or AI is going to look at those people and say, they're loitering. You need to pick them up. And it's the same with, you look at how they have everyone under surveillance now. You try to preach the gospel on the street. You're disturbing the peace. Arrest him.
David, you and I watched that video. It was quite a few years already. It's pretty old now. In terms of, when I mean old, it means more than 3 years or something like that. Because the technology and data comes in so fast now. But this was China when they were testing out, which is very prevalent now, their social credit score, Skynet, I mean, back then we were trying to shout from the rooftop, hey, China's doing some crazy stuff and it's going to come to the West. Not a lot of people paid attention to it, but hopefully now people pay attention to it. They call it Skynet, but now we have 15-minute cities. We have 600 million surveillance cameras, half of the world in China, and developing in other countries like Britain, the United States. It's going to be impossible to hide. It's going to be nearly impossible to hide. And if you're considered an enemy, because that's what they were talking about, we can apprehend all these criminals. It just depends what their crimes are. This surveillance is coming to smart cities developed in the West. How do you explain this to Christians who may or may not be aware or may not even be caring about what's coming, but they honestly should be knowing what's coming and preparing themselves spiritually?
Well, people are asleep, and even in the church, and we get people, I talk to people about evangelizing people, and I hear too many Christians are saying, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to see it. I want to talk about it. So there's this great apathy among people who call themselves the church and Christians. And so we do have to wake them up. And that's something that's going to be really important, because this is the gentleman that was interviewed on the film said this is omniscient surveillance, omnipresent. It's everywhere. So and what were they looking for? Constantly looking for criminals, and
Yes.
you have to have your card, you have to comply, you must comply, you must comply. And so for freedom-loving people like America has been, will disappear under these systems, and it'll be so weighted. And what China has done, they're the test for the world. And it worked, and they shut down cities, and it drove people insane, even under a communist country. I can't imagine what it's going to do here to people.
Yeah.
I know the
Yeah.
cities will be shut down first. The big cities, now you've got the mass part of your nation under control. And 15, like you said, 15-minute cities, you can only go this far, this many blocks. And you have a machine that tells you, you put your card out there, you can't go past this place, can't go past this place. If you do, you've been surveilled, and now you're a criminal. So it's forced compliance, no more free will, no more amendments. It's the destruction that is coming.
Yeah, and like Jay was talking about, sharing the gospel it'll become very much a criminal offense, not only disturbing the peace, but you went too far. You could only, if they let you even talk, it would be only within a certain amount of distance. But Jacob, back to you. This comes with other things. It's not just surveillance. It's not just the criminalization if you're spotted on facial recognition, but also it comes with incredible control of finances, the CBDC. And this is it's become a buzzword, but not a lot of people are concerned about it. I think people know, but they go on about their lives. The CBDC is coming from England to Europe to America, which just seems to, some states are fighting it. Israel has the icebreaker project. That it's been the test pilot for the world. Basically, Norway and Sweden were part of the border crossing, cross-border payments. It doesn't seem like any country is going to be exempt at this point. But they have the digital shekel, the digital yuan, the digital dollar, thanks to Biden's executive order. The world status is CBDC. And what does that mean, Jacob, to you? As we're staring down in the horizon?
Well, going back to your previous point, work while you have the light. Night will come when no man can work. They're going to shut down evangelism. But once you shut down people's means to buy and sell, to engage in commerce, you can control anything. You can control anything. We've already seen this happen in Canada when Trudeau closed down the bank accounts of protesters, truck drivers who disagreed with his policies politically. And he just shut down their bank accounts. We have the efforts by the Biden administration to turn the IRS into another political police force. I mean, it already is to a degree, but to turn it into a political police force, as they've done with the FBI and Secret Service, just turn it into a political police force. That's what they're going to do. So yes, it'll obviously be digital currency, but it will be also, and control of electronic currency, but it will also be, with that control, the capacity to shut someone down. Already, the corrupt IRS, which is a corrupt anti-American agency that needs to be abolished, ideally. The corrupt IRS was able to impound money of small businesses with no court order, with no hearing. They were just saying, oh, you paid in $9,000 twice, you have to report 10. We believe you're stacking. And they just went in and confiscated the bank accounts. This is how corrupt the federal government is and how out of control it is. One person, I think, who is watching this and telling us the truth, and I think people should listen to, is Rand Paul. Both the senator and his father, they are warning about what the government is really doing in this realm. The federal government has this deep state, and they want to integrate the IRS into it. And that's what's happening. It's going to be integrated into the deep state, same as the FBI, same as the intelligence community. It'll just be another arm of the deep state. And that's what's happening. But remember, they've already done this in Canada. They've already done things like this on very spurious grounds without court order in the United States.
Yeah. Jacob, what about that Jamie Dimon story you were telling me? What he shut down, the JP Morgan
He's a
shut
horrible
down.
figure anyway. He's a horrible figure anyway. But yeah, the company emails were, I guess, leaked, and they were looking to closing bank accounts of pro-life mothers as potential terrorists. Now, any pro-transgender, whatever, that they're okay. But anybody who is a mother, who is anti-abortion, pro-life, has a baby, loves babies, knows what abortion is, who'd want to kill their baby, in their thinking, this is grounds to suspect somebody of terrorism and close their bank account with no, again, with no litigation, with no legal process, with no judicial process, just the say-so of a corrupt bank. Well, who's running JP Morgan? Jamie Dimon. Jamie Dimon he's a Greek American. He's a Greek descent. And he reminds me of Onassis in Greece. He reminds me, he's a different kind of banker. He's not a JP Morgan type banker or a David Rockefeller type banker. He's a different kind of banker, and a very dangerous one.
Davey, I wanted to go to you. Obviously, Britain, EU are going cashless. They want to get rid of cash, but Australia seems to be even leading that pack, as well as carbon emissions within the financial system. So they're marrying the issue of climate change with financials, with IDs, with lockdowns, with CBDCs. What do you see there? Because people sometimes don't believe it. People just say, well, you say this theoretically, but I actually know you, and you actually tell me a lot of stuff that's going on there, and it is no hyperbole. It is something that they're doing. But what do you see going on in Australia?
Okay, well, the last figure that I heard, basically over 40% of Australians now, over 40% of the Australians now don't carry a physical wallet. They don't carry physical cash. They rely on their digital wallet. So especially the younger crowd, they're all relying on the digital wallet now. They're shutting down a number of banks. They're taking away ATMs. A number of banks are doing away with over-the-counter cash transactions. They're really forcing people to go cashless, basically. Yet this is still legal tender here in this country. I'm basically with the Commonwealth Bank. They have a carbon credit tracker It's an actual, at the moment, it's optional. You don't have to opt in. You can opt out, which I have. But basically, they're tracking you with everything you purchase when it comes to electronic currency. There's a real move here to try and demonize cash, though, at the moment. It's only Jacob just reminded me about it when he was talking. They're trying to demonize people who are using cash and basically saying we need to go cashless, we need to get rid of the ATMs because, and this is particularly true with the Generation Zs. They're using the Generation Zs as the example that the only time they'll use an ATM is when they're getting money for a drug transaction. So they're saying we need to shut down the ATM so we can stop the drug trade.
That's right.
Okay, if that is really true, then why are they putting up safe injecting facilities and rooms in Richmond, in Melbourne, and the likes? And why are they trying to legalize drugs? That's a an out and out lie. It's about control. It's about control. You mentioned Skynet earlier. In Skynet now, if you use cash, you can't look. If you can't even buy a subway ticket in China now without.
Wow.
You can do it with cash, but they want to know your name, your ID, passport number, all the information. The ATMs have cameras too. They're really trying to demonize cash at the moment so they can push more and more people into going cashless. This is hurting the elderly. A lot of, I live in the country. I know people now, they have to travel 40 minutes to get to their nearest bank. And now some of them are going cashless. They won't deal over-the-counter transactions. So it's the elderly who are suffering at the moment. But and the 15-minute cities, Melbourne's being generous. Melbourne's going for the 20-minute cities. But
nice.
What most
Very
people,
nice.
what most people don't know about here too is the fact that they've designated certain areas like Broadmeadows and that at the moment, and people think, oh, it's just that area, just for that area. But the Victorian government has adopted it as a whole of Melbourne, Melbourne policy. And if you read the writing too, you can see that's going to extend to the whole state too, the policies they're trying to push.
Wow. Yeah, that's of course the premier there and in Victoria, he's all over that. He's very for it. Yeah, and he wants that to happen very much so within his watch. So very interesting stuff. Yeah, go ahead, brother.
Even though we're using the term Skynet, that comes from Terminator. It's really the name of the Chinese system, isn't it, Marco?
Yes, that is the name of the Chinese
we didn't
system.
want to think we were terminating, but they actually named it after that.
And they said it was good. They said it was actually good, and kind of reminds me of a message we did a long time ago. Beware of the new good. What do they call good? Well, it's good that we don't have any Christians here. That would be a good for a lot of people in the world. And let's switch gears real quick as we're winding down regarding wars and rumors of wars. And I want to go straight to Israel because Israel is under severe attack. Latest, and you guys were giving me some updated numbers. Over 1,000 rockets fired into Israel and communities, including Tel Aviv. And they're fired, of course, by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, which is controlled by Iran. And Israel's defending itself and going after the terrorists. There is an Israeli fatality from the Jihad rocket, but there's been some terrorists who've been killed. I think today there was 2 more Palestinian Islamic Jihad commanders killed in Gaza. The efforts of Qatar, Egypt, EU, Washington, to get a ceasefire has not worked. Operation Shield and Arrow by Gallant and Netanyahu are still on today, and they're defending their country. And they continue to expect more attacks from the Islamic Jihad, from Hezbollah in the north, which has been not so much quiet, but unusually this quiet. Jacob, you were just there not too long ago. What's going on there now? And it's getting more and more inflamed. It used to be that you go periods of times without attacks. Now it just seems to be every other month, every other week. It's increasing.
Yes.
Other nations are involved. Iran just has a free carte blanche to do whatever it wants. It's meeting with Russia and Turkey and Syria. And there just seems to be no Western country who is coming on behalf of Israel and saying enough is enough. We're not going to put up with it. Israel's on its own. Jacob, what do you think?
Well, first of all, something is happening now that has not happened. Some of the rockets, not a lot, but some of the 1,000+ rockets that have fallen have hit Gush Etzion, which is the southern suburbs of Jerusalem.
Whoa.
Islamic terrorists don't usually fire at Jerusalem for fear of killing Muslims in East Jerusalem or even on the western outskirts of Jerusalem. Also, they've hit Bet Shemesh at the foot of the Shvilah, the area between the mountains of Judah and the coastal plain of Sharon. This area was Samson and David and Goliath things, Bet Shemesh. So they're hitting closer to Jerusalem. That's the
Wow.
first thing. Second thing, Iran is saber rattling and getting more aggressive, of course. But what the Israelis are trying to avert is Iran orchestrating a proxy attack via Palestinian Islamic Jihad from the south in Gaza and from Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, which it also controls in league with Syria. Notice the Israelis have regularly been hitting Iranian and Iranian-backed targets inside Syria. But the real fear is the humongous number of Katyushas and other rockets that are deployed by Hezbollah with Iranian advisors in southern Lebanon. So the Israelis are afraid of an attack from the north and an attack from the south occurring simultaneously. Therefore,
That's
they're
right.
trying to
That's right.
neutralize Gaza because it's easier to do both strategically and politically. There's also been increased deployments, not only of Iron Dome, but of the upgraded version, it's not even a version of it, but the upgraded short-range rocket interception system called David Sling. David Sling.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
those
right.
things are deployed more widely in Galilee and in southern Tel Aviv. They've hit Rehovot, which is a suburb of Tel Aviv. I've been to Rehovot many times. There's a fellowship of believers who meet in Rehovot. So they're getting quite aggressive, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. But there is the third factor that the media is not reporting. There's always something that they're not telling you. The Palestinian Authority, which is a de facto terrorist organization itself. It's Ashav, it was called in Hebrew. It was Yasser Arafat's organization, renamed Palestinian Authority after Oslo. They're terrorists themselves, and they're certainly pro-terror. They're grooming children in their schools to be suicide bombers and the rest of it. Yet the West, particularly the Biden administration, likes to fund them and give them money. But they are afraid of a Hamas takeover in the West Bank. Hamas took Gaza away from the Palestinian Authority, which was enabled through the corruption of the Palestinian Authority, who were pilfering tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in international aid given to build an infrastructure for the people of Gaza, but it was stolen by Arafat's henchmen. Hamas comes to power. Now, what Hamas is doing to the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, Palestinian Islamic Jihad is doing to them in Gaza. Hamas is afraid that the Iranian-backed PIJ will do to them in Gaza what they did to the Palestinian Authority in Gaza and what they're trying to do to the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. So notice you're not seeing any complaints coming from Hamas right now.
Right.
Hamas wants the Israelis to do their bloodletting for them. They want the Israelis to take out Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Now, this in turn involves not only political struggle, but it's the religious struggle between Sunnis and Shias. There is the Sunni-Shia divide. Hamas is still very much in the pocket of the Muslim Brotherhood, which Barack Obama wanted to keep control of. Obama had a pro-terrorist policy, even though Hamas is the military wing of the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood are the ones who assassinated Anwar Sadat
In Egypt, yeah.
wanted them to keep power in Egypt instead of General Sisi. Obama was a total pro-trader, anti-American foreign policy and anti-Israel foreign policy. He was pro-terror, and he had pro-terror policies with both Muslim Brotherhood and his dealings with Iran. And that's been continued by Biden. But right now, the Palestinian Authority feels threatened by Hamas in the West Bank. Hamas feels threatened by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, that is Iran's proxies in Gaza. So that's what you're dealing with.
Very fascinating stuff. Jacob, what about Nakba Day? They're making a big deal about this coming up.
It means disaster in Arabic.
Yeah, it's the day after the independence, May 14th, right?
Human partition and establishment of Israel, Israeli Independence Day. This is called the Nakba. The term has also been used in connection with the reunification of Jerusalem following the Six-Day War.
Yeah, 67. You have a congresswoman here. I didn't want to call her that, but Rashid Tlaib, that wanted to celebrate this Nakba Day in her office at the House, and she actually got shut down by McCarthy, who was using it to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the relationship with Israel. But here comes a Jewish guy, Sanders, who actually makes it happen for Tlaib to celebrate Nakba Day, which is the Palestinian idea of the disaster of Israel coming on. And of course, soon after May 15, 1948, they declared war on Israel, and they came in to try to destroy us shortly after they became a nation. This is ridiculous.
You know,
this is ridiculous.
Left-wing Jews like Bernie Sanders, Noam Finkelstein, and Noam Chomsky, I think that they are as much enemies of the Jewish people as Adolf Eichmann. As far as Tlaib, she danced with the Palestinian flag when she was first elected. That woman has no right to be in the country. If anything, she should be tried for treason. Hamas is a terrorist organization. She danced in support of Hamas, in support of a terrorist organization. The woman should be arrested, put on trial, and if convicted, hung for treason. She should not be deported or something. She should be hung. If justice were to prevail, that woman should be indicted and face trial for treason.
I think it's DOJ and FBI. They're all going to run interference on that. I think she's from Michigan, I believe, which is a large Muslim community there, as well as Omar from Minnesota. They're both very much pro-terror. It's not even pro-Muslim or pro-terror.
Michigan is the strongest Islamic outpost in North America. Thanks again to our corrupt politicians in Washington, people who never should have been let in the country.
Jacob, what about this meeting and seemingly an alliance that's been forming for a long time? It's nothing new, but here you have in Moscow, Russia, Turkey, Iran meeting together with Turkey, and one of the major points is Assad the rightful and legitimate ruler of Damascus, which has been some controversy with Turkey because they've constantly gone into Syria, constantly trying to take over the Euphrates River and all that. But Erdogan is, I guess, right now very subdued to accept Syria and to legitimize Assad's regime, because he's also got some problems in his own country, economically, politically, but he's got a huge election this Sunday as well, in that Turkish leader. Basically, I believe his name is Kemal. He is very much popular with the country, and he doesn't like the Russian relationship with Turkey. Any thoughts on that, the way Turkey's going to go? I mean, we've been talking about Erdogan being replaced.
Assad is being reingratiated into the Arab League. He was taboo. He was ostracized because of what he did to his own people. Okay, he was ostracized by most Arab countries, including the oil-wealthy Gulf states. Now he is being ingratiated into the Arab League. That's interesting in itself. And of course,
Yeah.
it spelled another diplomatic and political failure for the Biden administration. And Blinken and the Board of Incompetence. But there's that. But concerning Erdogan in Turkey, as you point out, his economic crisis, nearly 100% inflation. If they were to be honest about it, they're saying it's 85 or something. It's probably 100%. He's in trouble. Not only that, but 20% of the country are Kurds, and they are concentrated in the south east of the country. And the Kurds don't like him and will certainly vote against him. Now, the Kurds have never, ever been able to do too much politically because of Turkish nationalism among the other Turks. But now there's so much dissatisfaction with Erdogan among secular Muslims and among people being hurt economically, which is widespread, that the Kurds have for the first time emerged as a significant political threat electorally to Erdogan's regime. Now, you have to understand something. He is a fundamentalist Muslim. He does not believe in usury as such, he says. Therefore, he would not do things like raise interest rates to control inflation because he considered that to be usury. So he let the inflation go through the roof, and look what it's done to the Turkish economy. People are freaking out. Even many poor people who in their ignorance and stupidity voted for him because he was a fundamentalist Muslim. And they, again, in the Muslim world, it's mainly the uneducated who tend towards fundamentalism the most. Not always, but usually. They're being hurt significantly. He looked upon them the way the Democratic Party in America looks upon blacks, or to a degree Hispanics. They're going to vote for us no matter what. That's how Erdogan looked upon the poor people of Turkey. But now he's got a real problem. There was somebody in the States, he lives in Pennsylvania, who was an opponent of Erdogan. And the United States backed him as an organized political opposition to Erdogan. But there was a coup attempt, and Erdogan purged the army of the military officers who like him and retained power. This is the next time it's happening. This is the next time his power is threatened. And we should not underestimate what he might do if he's voted out of office. We should not underestimate the fact that he might just, well, it's a de facto junta already, but just make it an out and out.
Yeah. No, absolutely right. As we're coming down to the end of catching up, we want to make sure people know we're going to be jumping out of YouTube and Facebook and go into Rumble, Memorial.tv. Send your questions in if you want them to be asked. Jacob will take them on. David will take them on. David, final thoughts on this particular area? Turkey, Iran, Russia. A lot of people say Ezekiel 38, 39. It's lining up. And Jacob and I and you, we've talked about it at length. You know, is it for sure it's the one after the millennium? Is there one before the millennium? These are questions people have, and I don't know if the answer is going to be clearly given. But what do you think? It's just an alignment that's been an alignment of evil rising up with Turkey, Russia, and Russia wants to control. Obviously, they're meeting in Russia. They're meeting in their home turf, so they are calling some of the shots there with Iran and Turkey and bringing Assad in. What are your thoughts on that as we conclude?
Well, if China is brought in as a peacemaker and they quit fighting, and Russia gets Crimea and gets its gateway to the Middle East by land, well, it certainly looks like a Ezekiel 38, 39 scenario. And certainly we see the men from the Far East, Islam hating Israel. But Turkey, I believe Kemal seems to have a pretty good platform of an opposition of Erdogan.
Yeah.
So is this
he's pretty popular.
I would ask Jacob, do you think this guy can be like a Trump to stop him because he's promising to let up on the curbs that Erdogan's done. He's promising more freedom.
It
and
would be
stuff.
an answer. If it does, it would be an answer to prayer, particularly because he's anti-Putin, which means he might close the Dardanelles
Right.
to Russian military vessels. That would be the best case scenario. That would be a best case scenario, but it would, of course, not be congruous with anybody who's expecting this to turn into a Gog and Magog scenario in the short term.
Yeah, that would. Yeah. So, well, we'll keep that in prayer. I think his first name is Kamal. And
Kamal,
I
yeah.
don't know how to pronounce his last name, so I'm not going to botch it. But
I think it's important that you have to understand Turkish history to appreciate electorally. The founder of modern Turkey after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire was Kemal Atatürk.
Ataturk, yeah.
Born in Greece, but he was the founder of modern Turkey. And he envisioned the Turkey sort of like Japan, where, like MacArthur's Japan, where MacArthur said, okay, Shintoism is just to do with culture. That's your religion. It's to do with culture. It's not to do with politics or shoguns or warlords. Correct me if I'm wrong, James. That was the idea. We are going to have a Japan that is a Western capitalist industrial democracy. That is, we're going to be a commercial industrial democracy with a democratic government. That's going to be Japan. Well, before MacArthur, that is what Kemal Atatürk wanted for Turkey. He wanted religion separated from politics. He wanted it to be a democracy, and he wanted Turkey to develop economically as an industrial as well as agricultural power. That's what he wanted. So because the present opponent of Erdogan has the same name, that name itself stirs up a sentiment among the voters in Turkey, at least among some voters, and intimidates Erdogan. If you know what I'm saying.
To go back to better days. Yeah.
Really
absolutely.
psychological, but it's like if somebody's name was, Abraham Lincoln Jones, or if somebody's name was, JFK Robertson or something, like Robert Kennedy's son,
Yeah.
their name recognition carries a certain amount of political clout. So that is another factor of what's happening in Turkey.
Yeah, and he's very popular. So he's popular among the young, and he's obviously, whether you like social media or not, he's taken to social media, and he's very against Russia. So that is won him a lot of sympathy from a lot of people that don't want Turkey to be in this situation as it stands. So very good stuff, gentlemen.
may God watch over him and keep him, and he not have an accident.
Yes.
Yeah, so he doesn't get on a plane or something like that. But this will
China tries it, Iran tries it. They're more successful, particularly China. But Turkey is not as successful in trying to censor the internet, and young people see it and think for themselves.
Yeah, amen.
Yeah, absolutely. We must pray for the people in Turkey that they receive the gospel. And we forget about Turkey, but so much of the New Testament and the history of the New Testament is in Turkey. It was the bedrock of Christianity in the first century was there. The Church of Paul, the Paul that founded the gospel, right? And John went to live in Ephesus. I mean, so much of the history of Christianity is right there. So may the Lord bring back those who he has called for himself in those areas. So very good, gentlemen. We're going to be closing out, catching up. We're going to be jumping over to Backstage, which will be on Rumble, on Memorial TV, memorial.tv, memorialtv.org. We will also be on Telegram and Vimeo. We will not be on Facebook and YouTube, so you might jump out of those. Get to Rumble, ask the questions. Questions are coming in. So we'll put Jacob and David on the hot seat for a minute, and then we'll talk about what's going on. It pays to be a Biden. Look at that. It pays to be a Biden. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So God bless you guys. We'll see you on Backstage.
Hello, and thank you for watching Memorial TV. There are so many things that are happening at Memorial Ministries worldwide, from the Philippines to Japan to India to Africa and back to Europe and the United States. So many of our brothers and sisters are spreading the good news of Jesus Christ to this lost world. We are so thankful for your prayers. God has been faithful and has blessed us in so many ways. If you'd like to partner with our efforts abroad and at home, please take a moment to click the link in the description and help us as the Lord leads you. Thank you very much, and God bless.